Shit's kinda crazy right now, isn't it? I, like a lot of people in the world right now, am a little afraid. And in times like this, it helps to have pieces of media that lift us up and continue to provide us with energy and joy. After all, we need to keep our fighting strength up and stay motivated and participating to make sure, our country doesn't descend into a fascistic hellscape. And for me, at least during the first Trump administration, that show was Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. This show is truly one of a kind in its relentless message of resilience, change, and resistance to the negative powers around you, and inspired me to keep hope alive in a time where I felt utterly hopeless. One reason is the main character, Kimmy, and the force of positivity that she is. Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt's core concept is a woman who emerges from an underground apocalypse cult after 15 years, who then decides to live in New York City to continue her life, which, while an utterly ridiculous premise, plays heavily into the main theme of the franchise, which is tenacity and perseverance. She spent her years in that bunker fighting back against the Reverend, ridiculously played by the hilarious John Hamm, and never giving in to his ploys or abuse, holding out hope that the world was still there and they would one day be able to escape. In the very first episode, we get a flashback of Kimmy finding a rat in the air vent and using it as proof of her convictions. And while I won't spoil any more specifics in case you haven't watched the show, she spends her time in that bunker working to protect the other women and to keep as much hope alive as she could. And in the end, she's rewarded, as the world, despite the drastic change, is still around to be enjoyed, and she is not going to take any of it for granted anymore. And due to this intense trauma she's endured, she comes into the world ready to make her mark and enjoy her life to the fullest. After all, she's missed a ton of it. That's why she wants to live into the city. It's the place where dreams come true, in, the perception of many people's minds. And even though she lives in a very dingy apartment in a rather unsafe or clean neighborhood, she's thrilled with what she has. She's grateful and making the most with whatever she can get, which is definitely better than where she just was. Despite her lost time, Kimmy immediately works to continue her life and not let her past hold her back in becoming a success, trying to get her GED and get educated so she can truly get a well-paying job and make a difference in the world. This show does a really excellent job of making the perhaps dirtiest place in America extremely colorful and vibrant. Even though their apartment is horribly constructed though, it's decorated with such color and enthusiasm that I honestly would want to live with them. And every joke about the status of their neighborhood, how it used to be when Lillian was younger, or the amount of bugs is so alarmingly hilarious, but their acceptance and ability to find happiness despite all of these inconveniences is so admirable. Kimmy is such a positive force to be reckoned with throughout the series, and she essentially sleeps in a closet. It's worth noting, however, that she's also extremely naive, mostly due to her stunted development through her teenage and young adult years. The world repeatedly beats her down and challenges her view that anything is possible for her now that she's free. But the important thing is that she resolves to stay strong through all of it. She doesn't let the world make her quit. She comes back stronger and louder every time she's beaten back by reality.
You can either curl up in a ball and die like we thought Cindy did that time, or you can stand up and say, we're different. We're the strong ones, and you can't break us.
When she wants to move past everything that's happened to her and kind of just forget about it, the reality of her situation shows her that that's just not possible, and that's not how the human mind works, and will result in her actually feeling worse in the long run, or, in the case of this series, acting out in some extremely erratic ways. So instead, she resolves to go to therapy and actually face her issues head on, and ends up so much better off for it. She accepts the reality of her situation and moves to do what is actually possible rather than just barreling forward with what appears to be a positive direction. That's really the difference between PosiTVty and toxic positivity. Accepting the reality of the things you can't change rather than plowing ahead without listening to anyone around you. And I think Kimmy Schmidt definitely toes that line very well. Yes, there are things that she needs to accept about the real world that she cannot change. Part of life is that acceptance, but it's also resolving to fight for what you believe in and never giving in when others get you down. This is why it's so important for times like these. Don't let anyone convince you it's over. It is not over. Get loud, get involved on a local level, stay strong, and keep your convictions. We can get through this. Kimmy Schmidt did. We are the strong ones, and you can't break us. You can stand up and say that, or you can give up. There's only one choice that makes sense to me, personally. And in the end, Kimmy is able to make that difference that she so desperately wishes to, bringing about a positive change to the world around her, and creating a place that she would like to live in. Again, I don't want to spoil too much of the specifics for those who haven't watched this show yet, but the ending is genuinely touching and always makes me tear up because it's such a beautiful take on Kimmy's goal as a whole. Another reason is the other main character in this series, Titus, and taking action. Titus is introduced to us as someone who largely has already given up on his dreams. He moved to the city to become something huge and thought that his transformation from a small town straight jock to a magnificently fabulous gay man would result in an equally fabulous lifestyle. Instead, his many auditions resulted in nearly no roles, and he struggles to earn a decent living. As a result, he's rather cynical and isn't willing to put in much effort to his dreams, as he expects nothing really to work out for him as it has done in the past. Over the course of the series, what he learns from Kimmy is that you can't wait for your life to start, and that settling into misery isn't a proper way to adapt to failure. You have to keep trying to go for what you want, or else you're never going to get what you want, whether that be in your professional life, your love life, or anything you'd like to do, really. If you resign yourself to a riskless life, you'll avoid disappointment in the short run, but in the end, you'll end up more disappointed than anyone. He's able to realize that even if he's experienced failures and has wasted a lot of time, he's still got so much life left to live, and there's so many possibilities still on the horizon for him. Understanding that allows him to take more chances, even when there's trepidation for the consequences of taking those risks, pursuing opportunities and going the extra mile, dedicating time to those he loves, and taking steps to better himself and make healthier choices. They're not always easy, but they will result in a more positive outcome. And like Kimmy, he may fail during the series in major ways, but always manages to come back on top even after his major low points. A lot of the characters in this series really do fail often, including Kimmy, but the importance of this message of tenacity is that they are able to get back up again. He also learns a ton about benevolence and doing the right thing, as he also begins this series as a rather selfish person and friend, even if he is hilarious. That he just can't keep relationships without considering other people's feelings at all, and sympathy is integral to maintaining healthy friendships and romances, and that sometimes he should make choices based on what's right, not what is necessarily best for himself. I respect Titus for his ability to change and develop through Kimmy's influence. It's evident that he truly wants to change even when he struggles. Notably with his storyline with Mikey, although again I won't go into specifics, in season 3 I really like the direction it took, even if it was momentarily sad. Another great lesson that comes from this show is through the character of Lillian and the acceptance of change. Lillian is a fascinating character and one whose arc honestly surprised me by the finale of the show. She is a woman who's spent extensive time in this rather crummy neighborhood in Manhattan. She's fallen in love, lost those close to her, and lived a full life in this city that she is incredibly proud of. But the world around her is changing faster and faster, and the more she tries to cling to what she knows, the more it slips through her fingers. Even when the change is pretty much overtly for the better, like having access to clean water. While yes, it may not always be for the better, not all change is bad. The world keeps moving on no matter what you try to do, and that will bring some great things for humanity, and inevitably some terrible things for humanity. You can chain yourself to a bulldozer all you want, but people are still going to find a way to use that bulldozer, trust me. And yes, when people come to your neighborhood and buy out old businesses or improve water quality, it can lead to higher rent prices, but it can also lead to an area getting access to healthier choices, like we see in season 3 of this show through the character of Artie Goodman. And yes, it's hard to watch locations filled with loving memories be changed into something completely new. But it also creates the opportunity for new memories to be made and for more customers to come to the area, increasing the amount of business. It's not as if it purges your mind of those memories either. Things have to change. It's just the way the world works. And accepting change is something that's difficult for many people to do. I think this storyline would be relatable for a lot of people. And the current movement, though, in the United States is definitely evident of this struggle. Consider the amount of progress that's been made since the early 80s or 90s. It's a different world now. And a lot of people can't handle the knowledge that life moves on, even if they do not, and end up lashing out at those who maybe are finally able to connect with themselves thanks to a more accepting culture, and then subsequently passing those lessons of hatred and repression on to their own children. But change comes no matter what. There is no stopping it, no matter how much you try to slow it down. Never forget that. They can try to erase the past 20, 30 years of progress as much as they want. It's not gonna work. There's no way to put the genie back in the bottle, and that's one of the most powerful messages this show conveys through Lillian's storyline. And the last main character also has one of the most compelling arcs about believing in yourself. Perhaps my favorite arc in this series comes from Jacqueline White, who starts this show as, honestly, a pretty reprehensible person. She is a wasteful, rich New Yorker who never works for anything and is largely insensitive to those around her. Plus, she has children and has largely decided to not take care of them in any capacity. This is not an interpretation. The show pretty much admits this. A lot of this comes from the fact that she connects her entire worth to her marriage and husband. She doesn't really have an identity after casting away her entire heritage and past when she moved to the city. And I'd encourage you to watch the show to find out more about her past, because it is utterly ridiculous and honestly one of the most hilarious storylines in the entire show, but also provides for a wonderful arc with this character. It's one of the reasons why I love this show so much. Throughout the first part of the show, she learns how to put value in her own skills and to try and make a life for herself without the help of a husband. She becomes a full person, learning how to form real friendships, not the ones she keeps for social status, how to care for others, her own family, and ultimately for herself, by discovering and subsequently going after what she genuinely cares for. And she works extensively to keep the life she had with Julian after they break up, and to make sure that she still comes out on top even when she realizes she doesn't even necessarily want the life she had anymore. And again, like the other characters, she has major failures that threaten this new path she's begun on. But when she begins to fall back into old habits, she ends up learning how much she's already changed, and how these habits don't necessarily work for her anymore. She wants and is actively looking for something more than just a man to provide for her. She's looking for someone to love. And through her own perseverance, later in the series, she's able to make the change she wants to see most in the world. Realizing her own strength, she can then move on to a career that gives her both fulfillment and that she has a natural talent for that she never previously knew existed because she had never bothered to explore her own worth. She creates an entirely different life for herself after giving up every advantage she had from being married to somebody else. She resolves to build her future entirely on her own strength, and it was amazing to watch her transform into a woman with a serious work ethic and genuine personality, showing genuine care and affection for even the stepchildren from her previous marriage, although still retaining that sense of vain humor and her core personality so as not to completely rewrite the character itself. And she shows that through enough effort, it is absolutely possible to change your life and better yourself completely on your own merit. Another thing that is super important about this show is the goofy humor, which is something that I think is so necessary and we don't get enough of in television today. One reason the show always seems bright and fun is that use of ridiculous and goofy humor. People are often very critical of this type of comedy due to what I believe is an issue with suspension of disbelief, where this humor that defies logic at times takes them out of their immersion in the show and instead of being funny, just strikes them as ludicrous. I get it, but personally, this completely silly atmosphere always put me in the perfect mood to watch this show. It raises my energy and consistently brings a smile to my face. It wakes me up too, I will say. It's pretty loud. At some point, you just have to accept that the world these characters live in doesn't really make sense. And that, then again, neither does our real world. And it is getting increasingly ridiculous every day. The characters are still rooted in their backgrounds, have definable traits, and go through clear arcs. But yes, sometimes the tidbits given about their pasts or current hobbies are downright ludicrous. And I love that. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and instead relishes in its own ridiculousness, which is why I think the humor in this show works extremely well. One of my favorite scenes that I can show out of context is when they get scared of a water stain on the wall.
So it's either this or that water stain that looks like a face.
Kimmy, that does not look like... Oh my God, what do you want? I'll do whatever you say.
Titus, my therapy homework is hard enough. I don't have time for you to freak out at the wall. Who sent you? You're not welcome here!
Like, what? What real person would ever act like that? But their reaction is so hilarious, partly due to the wonderful acting from the two main, from everyone in the main cast, honestly. They all kill it. But this show is also able to address some extremely serious issues while retaining that incredibly ridiculous atmosphere. It's not all lighthearted and shallow. Even when it talks about current events or addresses what horrors are going on in America, it never gets exceedingly depressing either. It laughs these issues off as also ridiculous, while the characters still work as hard as possible to their goals. And I think it's important to show the ridiculous aspect of what our country is putting forth, and to be able to laugh at it when it does reach this absurd level. Yes, we should absolutely work to change what we can, and speak up as much as we can, but at some point you just have to chuckle at the stupidity. And that helps us come to terms with it, I think. Or at least it comforts me in extremely dark times. Overall, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt works hard to show how tenacity and stick-to-itiveness can lead to a healthier, happier life. Whether that be resolving to change the world around you, accepting the changes that have already occurred, or working to change yourself. And that even when times are downright nightmarish around you, there is always room for positivity, and there is no room for giving up. Get loud, get involved, speak up, let yourself be heard. Don't let anyone ever roll right over you. Like Kimmy says, we are the strong ones. You cannot break us. If you enjoyed this video, consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/PosiTVty to get all of this content before it comes out on YouTube and the unedited essays so you can hear all of my lovely mistakes. But thank you for supporting us on YouTube as well. Every like, comment, subscriber means so much to us, and please discuss further in the comments. We love having these conversations with you, and we will see you for the next one. Goodbye.